Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation. So after we had received this message, we had to translate this story for you. The translation reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? I am a woman who is permanently based here in Europe. Me and my siblings, we are based here in Europe, but my story, the story that I want to share with you, it happened. This was when my parents were still alive, when we were still back home in our country there in Zim. So back home in Zim, when we were growing up, my father had his small tuck shop. My father had a small tuck shop. So whenever we were not at home, we had this other maid of ours. Our maid, she used to work in the house doing all of her duties and chores, and whenever there would be a customer at that tuck shop, then our maid was the one who would go and sell whatever the customer wanted from our small tuck shop. So what my father had done is that he had connected two intercoms, one at the gate. If you wanted to get into our yard through the gate, you pressed this other bell. Then there was a small speaker that used to ring in the kitchen. Then by the tuck shop as well, if you wanted someone to come and sell you some stuff, there was another button as well that you would press. Then the small speaker would sound. The sound that it gave out, it was always different. So then the kids in the neighborhood, they noticed something. They noticed that whenever they would press that bell so that our maid can go and sell them whatever they wanted from our small tuck shop, then the maid would always take a very long time, because sometimes she would be doing her duties, not being in the kitchen. By the time that she would reach the tuck shop, it would be a very long time. These kids, what they started doing is that they would sneak into our yard through this other space at the gate. Then they would get into the yard and go and steal whatever they wanted from the tuck shop. And whenever we would do our stock counting, our maid would always be caught with stock that was short. So my father and my mother, they then started suspecting that our maid, what she was doing, since she had one of her relatives that was staying in that same area, maybe her relative was coming and she was giving that relative of hers all of that stuff so that they can go and resell everything that they were stealing from our small shop. Our maid was then given a warning for stealing, but the stealing didn't even stop. When this stealing didn't stop, then the maid said that I am not the one who is stealing all of this stuff. I will never steal anything from you. The maid then asked for permission for her to bring a prophet at our house, and my mom didn't believe in these white garment prophets. But later on, when our maid went back to her village on her off days, when she came back, that was when she came back with this other man, and she introduced that man to my parents, and she said that this man, he was a healer whom she had brought from the village. So she wanted the healer to prove to my parents that she was not the one that was stealing from our small shop, but there was someone else that was doing this evil act, and she wanted that person to be caught, since my parents, they were always taking money from her salary. So she said that she wanted to know who was doing this thing of stealing stuff from our small shop. After that, my father then gave her uncle the permission to do whatever he wanted to do, to plant his herbs. The uncle had a lot of herbs. Some of the herbs that looked like stones, they were thrown on top of the tuck shop, some of them just around the tuck shop, and then these things were done in the night. So our maid's uncle, after he had finished performing all of those rituals, he then spoke with my father, and he warned my father that these charms were quite dangerous, and he said that if a thief was going to be caught, and there were certain charms that were supposed to be used, so he was the one who was supposed to come and release this thief, because this thief, once the thief would have entered into the tuck shop, then the thief was going to be stuck. He won't be able to get out of that small shop until some certain charms would have been used on their body so as to release them. But our parents and us as their children, we never believed that voodoo does exist. My parents kept on saying that why would a small child be stealing cooking oil, salt, meal instead of the child just stealing sweets? Because when these kids, when they started stealing, they were stealing like your regular sweets, but in the end they were stealing cooking oil, salt, and all the basic stuff. So we just believed that our maid was the one that was stealing all of this stuff. My brother, there was this other day when we found out that witchcraft is real. What happened on that day is that we had gone out. It was my father, my mother, my siblings, and I. We were just having a nice time. Then suddenly my father received a call from our maid, and he just instructed us to get into the car. He never told us what had happened back home. He just drove really fast. When we got home, we then found out that there was a young boy. This young boy was stuck by the door of the tuck shop. He was trying to enter into the tuck shop, and then my father saw that these kids were the one that were stealing stuff from the tuck shop instead of our maid. My father then panicked when he started thinking about all the things that he had been told by our maid's uncle when he was setting all of his charms, like if you do not release him quickly enough, he is going to die. So my father was saying, if this child is going to die, then everyone in the community is going to think that I sacrificed this boy so that I can make money with this tuck shop of mine. So my father then gave an instruction to our maid to call people back in her village. She called and she was told that the uncle was in another village that was very far, where he had gone to attend to some of his clients that had called him, and he had actually left his phone, so there was no way we could be able to be in communication with him. And then our maid's relatives gave us some instructions. So my father was told that he had to hit the boy that was stuck at the entrance of the tuck shop with his belt, but he had to do this only when he was naked. So my mom and my father, they were left outside, and then my father said that we had to go inside, including our maid. But we then went into the house, but we opened a curtain so that we can see everything, so that we could see everything that was taking place. My brother, witchcraft is real. As my father was busy beating up that boy, we saw sparks of But my brother, witchcraft is real. As my father was busy beating up that boy, we saw flames that were coming out of that belt. After this boy had been released by the charms, he then ran away. But after a couple of days, we had the sad news that this boy, he fell from a tree whilst he was playing in that tree. And when he fell from that tree, he suffered a damaged spinal cord and he became a crippled until we left the country. This guy, he was on a wheelchair. Then the second time it happened again, the boy that came to steal stuff from our shop became a crippled again. And whenever we would catch someone stealing from our shop, we would never tell anyone. It was just a secret. As for the third kid, we found him. He was stuck inside that small shop. He had a biscuit in his hand. Whenever he would try to throw it to the ground, the biscuit was always stuck to his hand. And after my father had hit him with a belt, he was released from the charms and he ran back to his home. And later on, this small boy, he was playing one day with one of his siblings. So they were playing next to this other empty swimming pool that was in their own yard. And after that, this young boy, he fell into that empty pool and he landed on his legs and he broke his legs instantly and he became a crippled because of those charms that was placed in our shop. 3 kids from our neighborhood, they became crippled. After my father had passed away, we then came to Europe. But sometimes I wonder what happened to those charms. If there is anyone that ended up buying my parents' house, what then happened to them? Like, did the charms affect them in any way? But this is my own story, my brother. Your dear listeners, right there was a story that was sent to me by our dear sister. Then we had to give you this narration.